Hey everyone, Joe Lines here, and today I am lucky to be talking to Steve Maziarz. Steve and I worked in a corporate office together for, I don't know, what, 4 or 5 years, roughly, I think?
Yeah, around that rate, yep.
We were actually on the same team overall, and actually now that I think about it, I even cross-trained, you cross-trained me for a little bit when you were you taking vacation or something?
Yeah, I was going on vacation.
Yeah, but it was really fortuitous that I can't remember how we actually started talking together, because we don't, even though we're under the same team, we weren't on the same specific team.
Right.
But I realized you had a clue about technology, and compared to like in a group, in an area where we're all supposed to be working in technology, and it was just the rare exception where someone knew what they were doing. Which actually I'd love if you can give us a little bit of background of your and actually I don't realize this. I know from talking to you and just from, because I had always come to you with these crazy questions and you could answer them. How I know you've been working in technology like forever, right?
Yeah.
But what I don't know is, like, did you go to school for technology? That's what I don't remember.
No, I actually I stumbled into it. I mean, my first experience with technology was when Radio Shack came out with the TRS-80 Model 1. And, there it was, this, magical thing that was going to do all sorts of good stuff for you. And there was no software for it.
You'll laugh. A guy I interviewed a couple back, he said the exact same thing. That's actually what got him into programming, was calculators. It made me laugh. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been doing tech for, I think this will be my 40th year now. Yes.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I started back in the good old days.
Well, and I know, because this shocked me when I was talking to you about it, but I think you said you even written OS systems or something, right? Or I mean, you were into programming.
Yeah, I mean, back then, like I said, there was no software out there to do anything. So in the course of working with the TRS-80, we ended up developing several different things. I mean, one was a software package that turned it into a point-of-sale terminal system. So terminals back then were, if you had one terminal, was $24,000.
Wow!
And with with our software and the TRS-80 Model 1, we ended up doing way more than a $24,000 terminal could, which was basically price lookups at that time. And we ended up doing full back-end accounting and everything, and it cost I think it was about $8,500 at that point in time. So.
And then remind me, because I know we've dabbled on different topics over the years. What other programming languages? Like, I know you've helped me with SQL. I can't remember if we've done stuff in Python, but what other languages do you at least somewhat use frequently? Is there?
Frequently would be obviously Visual Basic, and in the latest is probably the most frequent that I'm working on. But I mean, being an old dog, I started out in the days of COBOL and punch cards. So,
man.
So I know, COBOL, Fortran, a little obscure language called APL, a little bit of C. So, you throw a language at me, I'll pretty much figure it out.
Yeah. Well, that's it's a great point for people who aren't programmers also, is once you get one down, unless like for me, picking up C would still be kind of hard because I'm not used to memory management and all this other stuff. But even then, understanding following syntax, you can often read it, and learn how to tweak it without actually, having to spend too much time.
Right. It's, you just develop the portfolio of skills. The languages are pretty much basically similar to each other. So you pull it off.
Well, actually, I had an interesting call with the guy, and he was saying, if you really think about programming languages as another language, right, that you're learning another language, and there were some really interesting similarities in that, also you wouldn't try to pick up German by speaking it once a month, right?
Exactly.
You should really dig into it and keep trying to learn it. But also, it was interesting as we were talking about the similarities across it. So if I speak Spanish, I can look at Italian or French and stuff, and it's probably not too hard. But learning simplified Chinese would be really hard, and that's where I'm AutoHotkey, I can look at some other language, it's not hard. Looking at what are they called, what are the ones that run the they run the core. I can't think of the right word. It's at the process level. You're literally sending the
You're talking like assembly language?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not even going to try on that stuff.
C80 assembler was one of my firsts. So
okay.
Let's do that.
So about how long have you been using AutoHotkey?
It's been probably 3-4 years now. Pretty much as long as I've known you. And it's been great.
Yeah, it's for me. It was I call it the Swiss Army knife, and actually, I would love your thoughts on that because of your background in all these other languages and knowledge base. How do you what are the strengths of AutoHotkey in that sense of why would you go to it over a different one?
It's easy and it's in English. I mean, it's a very simple, intuitive language. Exactly right.
Yeah, a lot of the commands are straightforward. You're like, oh, string split. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know what that's going to do. What about weaknesses? I think you'd be great to give us some thoughts on that. Of compared to other languages, what annoys you about it? Like,
there's times where I've tried to do some things that clearly stretch the limits. Developing my own function, for example, that took a little bit of time before I was able to to figure out that particular nuance. But for what it does, like I don't even scratch the surface of the capability. Yeah. I mean, I've seen what you've done with it. And, wow.
Well, I mean, it gets back to also what your needs are, right? And just how lazy you are, because I'm really lazy, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to find a way to automate.
My boss once said, "You're not lazy; you're actually efficient."
That's right. Yeah. So speaking of which, not the boss's sides, but the whole automating your job. Like you and I, we were on the same team overall, and granted, we worked with different people, but so many people I would see could have automated their jobs, and yet, like actually, now that I think about it, remember when we set up that, what did I call it, meet and geek, where we tried to get people, we're like, hey, let's set up a once a month meeting, to sit here, and we're going to volunteer our time to help people learn how to use computers better.
Right.
And I think we had 4 people, like maybe not even that many, show up the first one, and then the second one, it's like it's so disheartening for me, because you're like, I watch how people, they work so hard.
And I think that's it. They're working so hard, they don't mentally, they don't think they have the time to spare granted, you're gonna have a loss of productivity in the initial part of it. Yeah. But man, the savings you're gonna get in the end, my experience, fantastic. I mean, wow.
Yeah. Well, and that's once you start getting into it, you just can't stop, right? You realize.
I wonder if I can get it to do this, Yeah.
Exactly. But that was one of the things that always frustrated me, not just where we worked, but other companies as well, of just the lack of people's willingness to sit and learn something new.
And everybody's working like the equivalent of 2 jobs these days, I think, so you're the stress is so ingrained to begin with. And then you have email, which is a constant interruption.
Yeah.
I've gotten to a point now where I will, I've taken the advice of some of these things, and I'll only really be responding to emails and pay attention or have my email running for, maybe half of the day.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just so tempted. That email comes in, and I got to pounce on this and leave this. And, next thing you know, you're 4 levels deep and you didn't get done what you wanted to.
Right. Absolutely. And the other thing, actually, it's interesting, is I've read a lot of this, and I actually stopped opening my email in the morning, and I would wait until like noonish, because mornings for me were by far, I was the clearest in thought, in focus.
Right.
And I didn't want to use that time replying to emails that I can do in my sleep almost. Right. Yeah. So I purposely, I tell people too, if you need something right away, you can call or text me, and I'll go look at it if it's a fire. But make sure it's a real fire. But yeah, it was that, and the other one that just drives me nuts is the whole. It works both for print and for an email, but like when you first see the email, make a decision, right? Like right then, deal with it. Don't come back and reread it and then reread it again 20, and then again later. Like take action on it. Like the second you see it, make a decision whether I can file it or I can delegate it or I can do something with it, and it's out of your inbox, right? And just be decisive, because you just waste time rereading the same thing over and over.
Yeah, I've seen a number of different efficiency articles where like physical mail, for example,
right?
Touch it once and
exactly, yeah.
Either garbage, it's somebody trying to get money out of me, it's somebody that's advertising a service I have no need for, or it's it's a bank or a bill or something like that I really need to pay attention to. So
yeah. Well, and so let's take it to the next level then, which is the other one, is why don't in corporate America, why do you think that like the average boss and manager, and HR, like they don't actually look for people who understand how to automate things in any way or be more efficient? It doesn't seem like, have you ever been asked like in an interview, like how you work fast, that like your skill set in that area?
Tips,
yeah, exactly.
Like that, or how are you? Yeah. Rarely have I had that. I've gone through plenty of interviews in the course of my career, and I saw, quite honestly, the prevalence of those questions was happening more way back when than it is now. So, and again, I think it just boils down to everybody is so busy just trying to get stuff done that they don't explore what might be out there to help them, pull it off.
Yeah, and it's disheartening to me. It's so sad that both the people themselves and corporate America or whoever, the bosses, aren't thinking about long term, right? Like, well, you know what? Yeah, we won't be too efficient right away because I need to level up some here and learn this stuff. But it's such a huge win in the long run that yet they just don't. That's not a focus.
Yeah, and maybe most people just they don't even consider that there's anything like that out there. I mean, wow. Or like macros in Excel, for example. That's something that I wrote a lot in my day. So, and you go try it. It's like, hey, I can make this go a whole lot more efficient for you. We had one task at a client I had one time that it was taking them on average to sanitize a mailing list that came in as a result of a seminar that they put on. It was taking them, I think it was 8 to 10 hours for the average list to be, cleansed and standardized and things along those lines. And I wrote, they were doing it in Excel.
Yeah.
I wrote a series of macros for them. And, what used to take a person on average 8 hours, by the time I was done, took them on like 18 minutes. So, now granted, there was a whole lot of time spent developing that, but look at the amount of labor savings, because they were processing on average 3 or 4 of these, amongst different people in the course of a day.
Yeah. Well, and everything you did, if something else came up with a similar need, you could adapt it much quicker than it took you that initial time, right?
Right.
Because you already have a lot that you can borrow from.
You develop a, just like in the legal profession, they have, boilerplate text for all the common disclaimers and everything like that. Well, eventually you develop a portfolio of programming code that you can reuse.
Yeah. So speaking of like an email list, right? So I remember this was where we worked, and I came up and I saw my colleague sitting there at his computer, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, in our tool, we need to have first and last name split out, but my list, which was like 50,000 names, they're together." And he was manually in Excel going and go into a cell and cut the last name and then move over and paste.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, hey, let's look at this real quick. And I showed him, what is it? It's under the data thing now, but text to columns.
Oh, text to columns, right? Yeah.
And I'm like, use a space, bam, but I'm like, I don't know how many he had already done, but I'm like, just the like, why wouldn't you, before you start doing that, just ask somebody? Like, there's got to be, like, there's no way
to do. Yeah, some people are just they're they're afraid to ask questions because they look like they're knowledgeable.
Yeah, which is another important thing, and that's what I always do in the AutoHotkey webinars is I said, look, we're all at different levels of learning, right? And that's when you realize, like, something may be super easy for me that you haven't done, and vice versa. It isn't that you're smart or stupid. Personally, I think you're stupid if you don't ask somebody because you're worried that you're going to look stupid, right? Yeah. You're like, just be like, dude, I'm working in something that, like,
exactly.
I don't know. I don't care if someone can solve it for me quicker and faster, by all means. And of course, what I'll say is, like, actually, I think a couple times we've been in meetings and you've done. I'm like, what? Wait, what did you do? I'm like, like, show me that. Like, I don't want to just let it happen and not, like, I want to learn, right? I mean, when I see the magic happen, like, I get excited.
Yep. Always looking for ways to to save time and make yourself more efficient. That's just more time for you to do more important things.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for me, what I did was I would automate more and more of my job, and then I would use the extra time to teach myself more ways to automate, right? Because then it was like no one knew that I wasn't, quote unquote, working in that time, right? Because I was so productive in the time that I actually got to do the stuff that it allowed me to learn more. But anyway, yeah. Do you have any examples on anything that you can either talk to you, like how you use AutoHotkey?
I can just show you one of the, in the course of regular work, I am doing help desk support. So the software that we have to do that isn't as modern as it could be. We're in the process of replacing it now, but the system I am using is older, and there's a lot of canned text, canned responses, just like we mentioned that portfolio of code. Well, if you're dealing with the same software package on a regular basis, you begin to see patterns of, people's usage. And so canned responses, hey, to common questions, how do I do this? Well, boom, you do that. Or can you send me instructions on how to go ahead and reset the system? So yeah, sure I can. But, if I were to do that manually, it's open up an email, get their name, copy the email address over from the current help desk ticket, do an attachment to the email of the instructions, type out, if I were to do that all manually, which I was doing for the longest time, you're in 5 minutes. Yeah. And by doing it through AutoHotkey, I've automated that to the point where it's a matter of seconds. It just boom, boom, boom goes and does that all for me. So those canned responses, are a matter of just, all I got to do is, Windows key H and da-da, there it is. So,
which that's the thing I love about AutoHotkey is you can tailor that hotkey to whatever makes sense to you, right? Which is one of the things that I love about it is it you can make it intuitive in that sense, right? Is you can make it work.
Yeah, I'll even have different versions of the same thing. Like some people I know are experienced users. I don't need to send them the instructions on how to create a diagnostic, dump of what they have on their system.
Right.
Other users I know are brand new. I've never dealt with them before. So, in one case it's like Control I, and in the other case it's Alt I. One gives them the instructions, and one just says, "Hey, send me a file," because I know they don't want to do it.
Right. Nice. And by the way, a few minutes ago you mentioned this in this process. You said you'd be watching it, and you said you'd recognize the pattern of whatever. And that's one of the things that I've been, out of these interviews, I've been thinking more and more about. Is like, more often than not, I think a lot of people don't automate it because they don't even realize, they don't see that quote unquote pattern, right? They don't realize they're really doing the same, parts of it at least are the same thing over and over. I mean, sometimes it's super obvious, but often they don't even realize that, like, oh, I open my browser, I go to the site, I enter the search or whatever it is, right? It's like, you know what, it's patterns are everywhere. And once you start getting used to recognizing them, I think it gets easier to spot them. And like, you can sit over someone's shoulder in a few minutes and be like, okay, You know, let me change your life, you know, in 5 minutes.
Let me make your life easier for you.
Yeah.
Trust me, it won't be hard. Yeah. Being able to do that, you know, anything repetitive for me, you know, after I'm into it for 10 minutes, I'm making mistakes because I just,
mercy. Yeah,
you know, I want to think as opposed to
the other one actually reminded me was I remember us exchanging emails about the topic. I don't know if I ever knew why you were doing it, but in Outlook, I think you had a script that would automate saving the attachments. Is that right? Was that
right? Yeah, we needed basically the process was we needed a way to publish a new category of information in the tool that I work with. So the easiest way was just, you know, go ahead. I was having people say, just email it to this special email address, and I'll take care of the rest for you. So basically, you know, what I was doing initially is just going ahead, taking the attachment, and the key part is saving it to a drive that the public did not, you know, we didn't want them to know was there, but it was basically putting that information so it could be published, that file, into the actual tool and shared with others. But we didn't want to share that address. So I had been doing that manually, and then, you know, then also confirmation back to the person, hey, I got it, and your job's, it's going to be published on Thursday, you know. So wrote an AutoHotkey script to go ahead and open up, cycle through. If I had like 4 or 5 of these emails, you know, I just highlight them all in Outlook.
Nice.
And then it would go through, open the email, take the attachment, save it in the drive, and then write a confirming email back to them and send it. So that was one key press as opposed to dump, the repetitive part that I talked about.
And then there was I'm already blanking on the name of the not that I would say the system, but the tool that you cross-trained me on. Like, we had some really old systems, right? That like didn't.
Yeah, that was a tool that I remember one instance that I had to go, and another very repetitive task. Somebody had made a mistake and put, like, I don't know, 150 files in the wrong directory. In that particular tool. So you had to go and open up each one of those things, you know, click here with your mouse, click over there with your mouse. And that's when I discovered, you know, AutoHotkey's capability to be able to actually, you know, position the mouse at cursor position such and such, because the window always opened in the same spot on the screen. So, you know, I went ahead and just, all right, you position it over here. You tell it to click on the mouse. You move, you know, move your mouse down, you know, 22 pixels, and click on that one and open it up. And it was just, that was amazing. I mean, that was another thing that originally was, by the time you did all that and saved everything, and I mean, it was like 3 or 4 minutes per item. And I had, you know, 100 and some items to do. So I'm like, you know, I wonder if I can make this a little bit easier. Because again, me and repetition don't get along all that well. So I did write that tool, and all I had to do was, you know, hit one combination of keys, and it went ahead and did everything else for me, and boom, I was on to the next one. So fantastic.
That was because the technology, like, that's one of the things I say about, as much as I love APIs, because I view APIs are the most amazing thing, like for a person who's used to playing with data, that I can programmatically, you know, connect to services and do what I want. It's amazing. But I'd even say the web scraping side of things, where I can automate a browser to do, you know, what I want, you know, either whether it's filling it out or getting, you know, pulling data off it, is such an amazing skill to have, to because so many tools, no matter how old they are, even you connect to them with the browser, right? And it's like, you know what,
you know, even some of them, look at, you know, software as a service nowadays.
That's right. It's becoming even more prevalent.
You've got all that out there, and it's the you know, quote unquote state of the art,
right?
But there's still in those kinds of tools, things that you're going to do on a you know, repetitive basis. And I'd rather press one set of keys than, you know, 14 and slide my mouse around here, there, and everywhere. So.
Well, and like you said, then you start, you get bored or you get tired or whatever, and things, you start doing things wrong, right? Versus,
or get interrupted, phone calls,
right,
people coming into the office, whatever.
Yeah, and for me, I also, it made it fun. You know, I was automating something that was mundane, and even if I broke even on time, the fact I actually enjoyed what I did, but also I can use it next week now, or the next time something even similar at all comes up, I can borrow from my code and I don't have to start from scratch, right? That's why I'm like, I just said, you know what? I'll so many things that I wouldn't have automated. I'm like, I'm gonna find a way.
Just makes it easier. Yep.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations of like what people should start with if they were to pick up any sort of, it doesn't have to be AutoHotkey, right? But just automation. What would you say is a low-hanging fruit?
Low-hanging fruit, a couple of things. Low-hanging fruit, you know, for me is automating email signatures, for example.
Yeah,
is another thing that I'm doing. You frequently misspell words the same way.
Oh yeah.
You know, AutoHotkey's got the feature where you can go ahead and you just take if you see this and you hit space, and I'll replace it with that. Another thing is me and like the apostrophe key on the keyboard. I'm not a regular actual touch typist. I just kind of, you know, my fingers know where all the keys are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where instead of the apostrophe, I'm hitting the semicolon.
Oh.
So I've got a number of things, like if I'm doing it's or your as in you are, you know, and you see the semicolon, replaced it with the apostrophe, and it just flies through. I don't even have to do a thing in that case at all. AutoKey does it all for me.
I disabled my insert key because I virtually never use it, and whenever I do hit it, it's an accident, and I'm end up typing over something instead of I don't want to type over it. I want to insert new text when I'm typing. Right. And I'm like, I wouldn't be paying attention. I'd just be typing. And I look and I'm like, son of a, like, all right. Yeah. And so anyway, I just disabled it entirely. I'm like, this is awesome. I don't have to worry that I hit it accidentally. Cool. Is there any other things you've used it for that, like, what about for other, like, non-corporate world? Have you had any uses of it?
Well, non-corporate world, like same thing I was just talking about, the frequently misspelled words.
Sure. Yeah.
Those are habits regardless of what keyboard you're on.
Right.
Or another thing is if you have someone whose name is really spelled weird, a very wild last name that you can never seem to get right. Well, then you can use create like a little shortcut feature. I'm not even sure exactly what the term in AutoHotkey is to do that, but like a //J, and it gets replaced with the guy's last name.
Yeah. So. It's a hot string,
Hot string, yes. There you go.
Which you can also have into it is you also do it case sensitive, so it'll uppercase, like the way you want it to be.
Yep.
And so that way, I never had to worry about it. I would just hit a couple initials, and it would put in people's names, and it was just like spelled properly, or the like how corporate America, they're really into policing how you have, maybe even you said like your signature or whatever,
right?
Or you have the copyright sign after something, and just you can have that all built into it, and so you don't have to worry that you're part of the brand police are going to catch you, because it's already done for you.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Is there?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. One other thing that I ended up doing is there was a situation where we had to rearrange columns in Excel. For one system, they had to be in this order, and when you moved it over to another, they wanted columns in a different order. So I went ahead and developed a AutoHotkey script to go ahead and do that automatically. And the beauty of that is you are sending keystrokes versus you're trying to write a macro in Excel. It's just a whole lot easier. Just boom, 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 and it's done.
Yeah. I've done a lot using COM, which is like basically VBA with Excel, but it just depends on what you're doing, right? And sometimes sending keystrokes are just easier, and if it's reliable, I'm like, I don't care, right? That's all that counts.
Yeah.
But I did some really cool stuff with spreadsheets, because I would export something from, let's say, like SharePoint, and I'd have a spreadsheet, and that would have like the contact's name and their email address and the project I'm working on, like the thing. And I had AutoHotkey. Basically, if I highlighted 3 of the rows and hit a button, it would write the emails to those people, putting in the subject line of what their project was about, and and just automated the whole process for me. And it was nice because I could interact with the spreadsheet, and just highlight which ones I wanted to tackle.
Right.
And it would even detect if it was the same person across multiple rows. It would combine it into one email for me, and put the HTML like I had a hard line, or a horizontal line in between the sections for them. Mm-hmm. But if I was supporting like 4 tickets for a person, I could just highlight all of them and hit it, and it was like, oh, this is the same person.
This, and this for you. You're good to go. Yeah.
But just little thing. It sounds little, but like you said, 5 minutes here and there on each one, and if it's something you do weekly, it saves a lot of time, and it's definitely worth the investment. And then again, it's never starting over on the next thing when you're borrowing from what you did before, right? It's just tweaking.
Yeah, exactly. Find it and do tweak it for the next system that you're working on.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and thanks for your support over the years when we were.
Oh, no problem.
Would explain a lot of the.
Always nice to be able to help people make their lives more efficient.
Amen.
I take great joy in having somebody come back to me and say, the people that used to spend hours in the mailing list. Yeah. Oh my gosh! I remember it was to see the look on their faces like, wow.
Yeah.
I have so much time back where I could do so much more. I love it.
I was just thinking about when this is years ago when your boss was on my team, and I wrote the one for SQL for parsing the list of things, and it would you take a whole list of things, and it would look at all of them, uppercase them all, dedupe them all, and then put them into an in list, quote unquote, comma, quote, delimited list.
Yep.
And she was like, you don't understand how much time, like, I think she probably, if you ask her, she probably still uses it, right? She's like, it's just like, otherwise you do it manually, and you're like, this is stupid. And you can,
common SQL. That's the other, now that you mention it, that's one other thing I just started using, common SQL queries that I run on a regular basis. Just put the form. It's almost like, if you were to do like an, HTML web page, you've got the standard boilerplate for that. And same thing with the SQL, select star from table name. So you can just automate that and substitute the table name in, and you're
right.
Good to go,
Yeah, I had quite a few of my SQL templates, right, for doing stuff. Especially, that was the other thing that drove me nuts, is I would see people, in the IT group, we'd be like, hey, we want to work on this table, and we're looking at this, and every time they would write out the thing by hand and have to look up the name of the table and then look up each field. And I'm like, but we always pulled the same ones. I mean, it was like every once in a while you want to separate, another column, but
exactly,
field. Yeah. But I'm like, I had, and that was where I built my GUIs to because I didn't use them enough to remember a hotkey, but I had them in a GUI, and I can be like, oh, here I want to join these 2 tables, click, and it would dump in my SQL query template. And then I could tweak it if I want, but it was just like, why are you looking up the table name each time and then remembering what the unique key was across the, between the things? It's like, figure it out once, have your template, and then have it easy to pull that template up, right?
Make sure, who doesn't want to make their life easier and more efficient,
Yeah.
It's a great way to do it.
I remember one time we were talking when I saw with AutoHotkey how you can use their ADO database, it's built into Windows to pop open text files and then do SQL queries,
right
on a text file.
Who would have thought that? Right.
Yeah, I sure didn't. When I found it, I'm like, what?
Yeah, that was
files. Yeah, I'm like, this is crazy. And the file was like 100K because it was leveraging the ADO. I think it's ADO or ADO DB or something like that within Windows. That's built into Windows. It's there. You don't have to install anything. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
It
was great talking to you.
As always.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you. Bye.
Cool. Oh, there we go.